Well, there we go, another load on the trailer and ready to go back home. I've been hauling a lot of hay off camera, and I've got it whittled down now to the point where I can actually see how many loads are left. And it looks like, not including this one that I've got loaded, that I should have 5 more full loads and then 1 kind of cleanup load where I'm getting like broken bales and whatever is left over. So my plan is to work on this all day today, although it will be a very short part of this video, and then we'll see what else we can get into. That's what's going on today on Farmer Tyler Ranch. Well, we're certainly getting low on space over here. I think I can fit 1 more truck and trailer load here where I'm standing, and then next to the big bales. But then that's probably going to be it, and I'm going to have to find somewhere else to put these. Now, the seemingly obvious solution is to just start stacking them up here, but the reason I don't want to do that is because they're sitting outside, and if I put a bale here, then when water sheets off of it, it kind of gets caught here in the crotch of where the bales come together, and then you'll get a big spoilage spot. For these bales to effectively shed water and not spoil each other, you can really only have 1 layer so that the water just falls off onto the ground. And one last thing before we go, I did notice when I had the trailer loaded that this front tire was a little bit low, and I actually topped this off with air yesterday, so it's apparently got a slow leak in it, which is actually not a huge surprise. In fact, earlier in the year when I was hauling bales, I noticed that the fender on the trailer here got bent, and it was rubbing against that tire, and the inside sidewall is kind of damaged because of that. So I'm hoping that this makes it through the, whatever I said, 5 or 6 loads that we have left, and then I'll need to replace that tire. Had this up to 70 pounds yesterday. I'm kind of curious how much it lost. Ooh, 20 pounds. That's not good. All right, we should be all ready to go. Fast forward to the end of the day, and the hay yard is getting pretty full. As is the barn. I've got enough room to park the 8N in here, but I'm thinking once I get that pasture hay baled up that it'll probably take up the rest of this space, and then the barn will be like full. So that's going to be it for hay hauling in this video. I didn't want to overdo it on you, but I did want to let you guys know where I'm at with all this. We'll get those mice. Well, if you can't tell, it's time to move pastures. Well, that'll satisfy him for a little while, and you know, we're a little bit past the middle of September as I'm filming this, and to me that means that we won't be rotationally grazing too much longer, maybe another month, maybe 6 weeks. I've had to start energizing the back wire, not because animals are trying to push through it to graze on the other side. No, it's because calves are at that age where they're just really curious and nosy. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the wires are getting chewed on, and posts are getting knocked over, wires are getting knocked down, and it's just because the calves are messing with them for no other reason than just that, you know, they're at that age. So I imagine a pretty quick way to get them to quit chewing on the wire is to energize it. But as I said, rotational grazing for the year is starting to wind down. Or maybe that's not the right way to say it, because I am still rotating them as I have all summer. But I guess what I'm saying is the end is in sight. And you know, one of the things that I love about doing what I do, and also one of the things that drives me crazy, is that none of these timelines are set in stone. It's all weather dependent. It's a lot of it's management dependent as well. But for like purposes of hay storage and things like that, I usually figure that I'll have to start supplementing the cows with some hay by the middle of October. Now, as I mentioned before, this is not always true. I've had to start feeding hay before that, and I've made it all the way into November before I had to start feeding hay before as well. So it's not set in stone, but that's the time of year where it's usually probably going to happen. The next week, I'll probably separate the bulls from the cows and put them here in this little field. So that'll help stretch this pasture just a little bit, you know, 2 less mouths to feed. And then there is the little Cripple calf. A lot of people have been asking about her because she hasn't been in the last 2 videos, and the only reason is that I just haven't really been doing anything different with her, and there hasn't been any kind of progress made. And honestly, it feels like this is one of like the saddest things that I've had to deal with on the ranch, just because, you know, the calf is all there, she just doesn't have the legs. I was looking back at the first video when I brought her in here, and it was almost a month ago. And in that time, I've given her antibiotics, painkillers, steroid. We've got her up in the sling, done, you know, I guess what my version of physical therapy would be, and kind of helping her walk along the fence line and do all those things over this amount of time. And if I'm really just being honest about how all this has went, she's not made one bit of improvement. And in fact, I think she's a little bit worse now than when I brought her in. So unfortunately, what I'm saying is that I believe we've reached the point where I'm just going to have to do what needs to be done, and that is to euthanize the calf. Fortunately, I am in a close enough proximity to the UC Davis Veterinary School that I will be able to donate the calf to them to use for teaching purposes. So in that regard, her life is not a total waste. But, you know, with the situation that we're in, that's just the best that I can think to do. And I've been seeing the comments, I've been seeing the emails. I know people are gonna have some feelings about what I just said, and rightfully so. It's sad. I mean, it's sad for me as well. You know, you guys are just watching this all unfold on your phone or TV or however you watch me. But I'm the one that actually has to live this. I'm the one that actually has to pull the trigger. So it's not easy for me either. I do firmly believe that when an animal is in bad shape like this and there's really no hope of recovery, that keeping them alive, you know, at some point that becomes selfish of me to do that, because I'm not able to face what I actually have to do. So this is by far the worst part of raising livestock, but every once in a while it is something that needs to be done. And it's important to know how to do it correctly. If you do it right, you know, it's just lights out and it's over with. If you do it wrong, you take a bad situation and you make it a lot worse. You know, this reminds me of something that a friend of mine once told me, and for whatever reason it really stuck in my head. And he was actually talking about hunting, you know, taking an animal while you're hunting, but it applies here as well. And that is that when you do that, you don't ever want to get to a point where you feel nothing about it. But you also don't want to get to a point where it affects you so deeply that you can't do it. You know, I don't actually know if anyone wants to hear this story, but I'll make it quick. I do remember the first cow that I ever had to put down. I think I was 15 years old. And if you're wondering, why did a young kid have to be tasked with that job? Well, by that time, Grandpa was legally blind. I mean, he could see well enough to like walk around, but he couldn't see detail. And I think that he knew that he probably wouldn't be able to place the shot exactly where it needed to go in order to do it effectively. I remember we were both standing down there staring at this cow, both knowing what needed to be done. And, you know, I volunteered for it. And I remember Grandpa was a little bit hesitant to let me do it, but he ended up agreeing because I think he knew that he didn't really have much choice. And, you know, you got to remember, his generation, when they were 16 years old, they were all lying about their age to go off and fight in war. So, you know, by comparison, it's, I guess, not quite as bad as that. But I remember where I was standing, the gun that I used. I mean, I guess I'll probably never forget it. I don't know if it's a good memory or a bad one, but it's one that I guess I'm gonna keep. Okay, let's shift gears here. I don't want to think about this or talk about it anymore. And I've got a project that I'm gonna try to slip in here before winter sets in, and I want to kind of show you what it is, and I need to start making plans as far as what I'm gonna need and how I'm gonna do it. So this brings me to the feeder that I've got here, and the way this is set up right now, I can feed, I should know this, but I have to count every single time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so 14, I want to say 21. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 slots here. So we got 19 or 20, depending on, you know, sometimes I've seen them get creative and get their heads in here, and you can get about that many cows up here pretty comfortably to eat. The problem is that is about half the size of my herd, and I would like to have the ability to feed everybody at this feeder at one time, because there are certain times of the year when that would be nice to be able to do. So I've been racking my brain as to how I can make room for all the cows here at one time, and there's really two choices that I can come up with. The first one being to just extend this feeder, add like 10 more slots on either side, and just extend it out, and that would work, right? And then the other thing that I was thinking of was to make basically an identical feeder to that one down here in the barn a little bit further. But the problem with trying to do this is that how do you get hay into it, right? Because when the barn is full, I can't get the tractor on that side, and it'll very likely be too muddy to really want to drive out in the corral to put a bale in here that way. So I'm kind of leaning away from that. I was thinking of a complex like trolley system where I could set a bale on a little cart outside the barn and then roll it along the rafters and then dump it right here. I don't know. It just seemed like kind of overly complicated and maybe not the best way to go about it. So I think the easiest way to accomplish this is to extend this feeder. I'd have to cut this end off, and then the big thing that is going to make this more difficult is I'm going to have to pour a bunch of concrete out here so that the cows aren't standing in the mud while they're trying to eat. I had to find where the edge of the old slab is to figure out how much extra concrete I'm going to have to pour here, and there's just no getting around it. It's a lot. If I double the length of the sides here, which is what I plan to do, then I have to come off of the existing slab another 3 feet, illustrated here by where the shovel is sticking in the ground. So the extra 3 feet gets me to the end of the feeder. Then we've got to come out another 8 feet so that the cattle actually have something to stand on. So if I'm breaking this down into different shapes to figure out the area, which is the way that I do it, coming off of the existing slab, we've got a slab that would end up being 3 feet by 24 feet long, and coming off of that we need an 8 foot by 8 foot slab. And then my thought was, you know, on the corners of the feeder to just have triangle shaped slabs, because there's probably not going to really be cattle standing there, but they might be walking back and forth there. So those, I guess the two triangle shaped together would end up being yet another 8x8 foot slab. So I'm thinking this is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 yards of concrete, possibly more, depending on how thick I go. And I'll probably have to pour it in 3 different pours just because I can only do 1 yard at a time. Now, if we're looking at 3 yards of concrete, that is getting into the realm of maybe just having a concrete truck come out here and pour it all at once. But the problem with doing it that way is when you do that, you got to have a guy running the trough, you got to have a couple guys screeting behind him, and basically it just requires manpower that I simply don't have. By pouring 1 yard at a time, me and one other guy, which will probably be my dad, so Dad, if you're watching, get ready, we got a concrete job coming. But we can handle that together, and if I have to do 3 pours to make it happen, that's fine. I can just attach them with rebar through the forms, and it should be plenty strong enough when we get done. So concrete work, while difficult, is not impossible. It's just, you know, it's like many things. It's just a matter of getting down and doing it. You know, we'll have to prepare all this ground, get all the rebar set, get the forms. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into it before the actual pour. And then that'll need at least 30 days to dry before I start letting cows walk on it. So we're kind of getting to where we need to get this done. But the part that is maybe the most difficult about all of this is that as long as this is going to take, you know, I'm going to have cattle coming in and out of here to get water, to get in the shade, and I've got to either figure out a way to block this off semi-permanently for the next couple of months while I'm working on it, or I need to think of a different idea, and I might have thought of one. Instead of trying to come up with a bunch of panels and everything to block that off, and kind of knowing that at some point the cows will probably push through them, especially if it's hot wire or something. I'm not even sure that hot wire would work over concrete. Maybe it would. But what I think is going to be a little bit easier is here where I've got the cow sprayer, just block this area off completely and then open a series of gates so that the cattle can get back up here into the little corral. By getting access to the little corral, they will have access to water, which needs to be cleaned. I'm going to do that right now. There it goes. They'll have plenty of shade under the overhang and in the bullpen. All around, this is seeming like the obvious solution, but there is one major problem, and that is that I was planning to separate the bulls from the cows next week, and when I do that, this is their water source, and this little 2-acre pasture is where they live. So I pretty much have myself talked out of this idea and convinced that it wouldn't work, and then a thought came to me, and that is that by the time I get all the form boards and the rebar and get everything where I'm actually ready to break ground on the project, the weather is going to start getting cooler. And looking at the forecast, it looks like after this week that our highs are only going to be in the mid 80s. That makes this problem a lot easier to solve. I can just put the bulls in here like I was planning to do anyway, and then in this area of the corral where I was going to section them off, I can just set up a water trough here, and you know, I've got a faucet over there that I can access water, and you know, we can just put a water trough right here in the catch alley, and they can come in from pasture, get a drink here, and everything ought to be fine. So if I can get this poured by the end of the month and then give it the month of October to cure and give me time to build the rest of the feeder, which honestly I think I can build a lot of this in the shop and then just bring it out here and install it, which makes things go a lot faster. But if all that goes according to plan, then this would be ready to use in November, and honestly I probably still won't even need it then. I'll probably still be bale grazing, and I probably won't really want to use this until December, or maybe possibly the tail end of November if things start getting wet. So that's a plan. I think I can get this done, but it is the kind of thing that is probably going to dominate my life here once I get going on it, because it's really I don't have an infinite amount of time to get it done. But enough about that. It's about noon now, and I need to run home, get the New Holland, and I think I need to rake that pasture hay one more time today so that I can hopefully bale it tomorrow. I know, some of you were worried you weren't going to get to watch me rake hay in this video, but worry not. Well, that's that. With any luck, we'll be out here tomorrow getting this baled. I noticed down in the back where it's real heavy, when I was raking it, there were still some visibly wet spots, but that's why we're out here, because yesterday when I was walking around out here checking it, I could see those. It's supposed to be about 100 degrees this afternoon. We got a little breeze, so that's good drying conditions. And I think by tomorrow, this will be ready to go. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.